So a while ago on my Spanish journey, I was looking for someone to help me learn German. I had some German already and I wanted to improve it. And I had come to the conclusion after all these years that I would only work with someone who's a polyglot, who knows four, five, six languages or more. And so my strategy was to look on italki, one of these apps, and scroll down the list where there's hundreds of teachers so that you can quickly play a little video and you can see how good they are. You can see them present themselves. And what I was looking for was someone who knows many languages, but there were probably two people in the whole world of thousands of people I looked at that stood out to me because they had the perfect accent in every language they spoke, and they demonstrated that. And that really is a very rare skill amongst polyglots. So I spoke to Francisco, and he became a German teacher for a while, and just really impressed with the way that he was always able to explain things through the lens of another language. I spoke a couple of other languages that he spoke, and it was really the master key because he could explain to me things zooming out. And that's what I always preach, is somebody who knows many languages can actually understand how language as a whole fits together and explain to you things in other ways because they can see it from a bird's eye view. So fast forward years later, Francisco and I have become friends. And when I started this Layers Method project, I always hoped in the back of my mind that I could bring someone as good as Francisco on board. My goal is always to bring in only the best in the world and to make this the best program in the world, undeniably. So we're very, very lucky to have Francisco here, who's going to be helping us from now on, particularly in terms of taking people through hands-on transformations, creating new layers, voice notes with the perfect accent, and more things like that. So, Francisco, good to have you.
Likewise.
And I wanted to just get to know you, let the people get to know you a little bit, and ask a couple of questions. So maybe you could just start off with your story. How does a boy from Argentina end up learning nine languages like yourself?
Yeah, I was indeed a boy when I got started. I was only 18. I had always wanted to learn German because my great grandmother came from Germany, and my family, they would always talk about how nice it was to have European roots and so on. So I got started when I was 18, and yeah, after 3 years or something, I realized I really liked it, and I don't know, there was something that I seemed to understand that the other people in the course didn't. And one thing led to another, so I thought maybe I could also learn French and maybe some Italian, and it just became like a hobby. Then I moved to the Netherlands in Amsterdam when I was working at a hostel for 2 years, and that was like the dream job for me. I would just spend 5 minutes speaking in Dutch, 5 minutes in German, English, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, you name it. Obviously, after 2 years, I was like fluent in all these languages. And yeah, I guess the inevitable consequence of all of this was eventually trying to help people learn languages as fast as I did.
Awesome. And so am I correct now? Nine languages you speak?
I would say I speak 8 of them now. I've forgotten Swedish, but yeah, the other 8, yeah, fluent as Spanish, I would say.
Fluent as Spanish, fluent as your native tongue.
There are some words in Polish that I sometimes fail to find, but
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I remember when you started learning Polish, which was quite recently actually, and you were
Right.
saying how hard it was. It's like different to everything you've learned before. So you
Yeah.
say now you feel comfortable.
Yeah, to the audience who's listening to us, please don't try. Don't even try to learn Polish because it's going to be damnation in one word.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. So we've been keeping tabs on each other for quite a while over the years, and I wanted to ask you, now that we're going to be doing stuff together, what is it that drew you to the Layers method and this method of learning or teaching Spanish?
A few months back, Rob messaged me asking if I could take over one of his alumni. And yeah, after the first lesson, I realized that the stuff that he had learned in the course was really ingrained in his brain, so to say. So I thought, maybe it's worth checking out this method, this layers method. And so I did, and I spoke to Rob a bit, and yeah, I realized that it's sort of, I don't know if the word is revolutionary, but it's a completely different approach from anything else I've seen before. I don't know, it just has a different dynamic and seems to permeate deeper into your subconsciousness. So yeah, when he called me and asked me if I wanted to start collaborating more intensively, it was a no-brainer.
That's good to know. And just so that everyone understands, you've been teaching language basically full time or sort of like that, along with some other things for a long time, right? And you've written two books on how to learn language, etc. Let us know a little bit about your teaching side.
So I started teaching German and Dutch maybe 10 years ago, but back then it was just a hobby. I wouldn't even take money for it. And then when the first lockdown started, I took it more seriously because I basically had no choice. And yeah, I just realized that I loved it. So I went from teaching German to maybe I could also teach Dutch. Maybe I could also teach Italian. Maybe I could also teach French and Spanish and English. And yeah, all of a sudden my job consisted out of that, which I loved the most, which was like sharing this passion for languages. Eventually, my network grew so busy that I had to start outsourcing some of the teaching hours and started finding teachers in Argentina who would follow my, let's say, my values, my principles, my methodology, and start helping other students as well. And yeah, at some point I realized that it would have been a good idea to put all of this together in a sort of framework to better organize it and understand it and share it with new teachers and students. And that's why I wrote that first book, Role Play. And the second one that I wrote is actually, it's more of it's a complaint or a criticism of how ridiculous Polish grammar is in the shape of a novel. I wouldn't say it's a book for nerds. It's a book for Polish people who don't know what the hell they're doing when they're speaking Polish. Through the eyes of a South American, which over there is sort of exotic, you know?
That's funny. And just a little bit more, you're a musician too, right?
I
See
am.
the piano in the background and there's a guitar, I think, on the one side.
Yeah, this is 100% not on purpose.
So, so um, I think the reason that makes a difference as well is, clearly you have an ear, not just the mindful languages, but the ear for accents and for sounds, I think there's a different level of linguist, of polyglot when you're a musician too.
Is that a question?
It's a statement. It's a statement.
Would
I
you
wanted
like
to
me
point
to
that out.
confirm and elaborate on it?
Yeah, what do you think about being good at music and how that relates to languages?
Yeah, it for sure plays a role, especially with your critical thinking and analytic skill set, which is something that unfortunately not everyone has, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn a language if you don't have it, because there are certain things
Yeah,
that
yeah,
other
yeah.
people do a lot better than I do, you know?
Sure.
But it helps because the way I see it, one of the key skills that you need to develop if you want to get good at any language or anything actually is to learn to pay attention to details, right? So the small difference between mucho and mucha and muchos and muchas, those are the little things that might seem irrelevant for an English speaker because it's much or many, depending on the sentence, regardless of the gender number and so on of, the stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention to these small nuances, you start really getting under the skin of the language, and eventually you stop thinking in English and translating to Spanish, and you basically switch to Spanish when you need to use it. I guess that is very related to the kind of attention to detail that you need to develop if you want to become a good musician.
Yeah. And as you say, that's not important for all Spanish learners to be musicians. But the reason I point that out is because if you're looking for a good teacher, if they're a musician, it does add quite a whole extra set of attention to detail. So switching gears a little bit into teaching Spanish, learning Spanish, for the people in the layers method. I know this is a vague question, but how long do you think it takes to learn Spanish? Everybody wants to know.
I guess the first step would be to define learning Spanish, because if your objective is to have to be able to have a 10-minute conversation when you go to Mallorca or Zihuatanejo on holidays, then if you have the right tutor and the right materials, then you could probably get there in a month or even less. It's all about your motivation. But if your goal is to write books in Spanish or, hold presentations in Spanish, then probably you need a bit more than that. And it could take you anywhere between 6 months, being really optimistic, and 2 years. But as I said, it all depends on your objective.
Yeah. So there's actually quite a few well-known language learning methods which actually preach more like 5 to 10 years. And I know there's a very famous method which won't even let you speak for the first 5 years. They just don't allow it. You have to learn all the grammar first, and they don't even allow you to try to speak. So
I'm not acquainted with that last one, but I think it's bullshit. Like, if anyone offers you that, just pass on it. Because I think this is one thing that you and I agree on, and that's that anything you learn, ultimately, you need to go and use it in real life situations as soon as possible, because that's when the real learning happens.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And what I've always tried to preach is, like, even after layer one, try and use it in the street with someone you don't know, especially if you're on holidays, you've got the opportunity to try and speak to people. And once you get comfortable with those basic words and you learn some of those early words, like how do you say, then you can actually start to pick up Spanish in Spanish. You can start to learn a bit of Spanish during Spanish instead of from English, which is kind of something you want to get to quite soon, is learn how to ask for Spanish words using Spanish. It helps a lot. Next question is, what makes Spanish fun and difficult to learn?
That's an interesting one. A fun bit about it is that it will definitely teach you to tackle language from a different angle, because there are certain aspects of language that in English are completely irrelevant. For example, how verbs change depending on who does them, who carries out the action, right? That's, to eat. I eat, you eat, he eats. Oh, we added an S. How challenging. But that's it. And then we eat, you eat, they eat. That's it. Whereas in Spanish, depending on who does this action, eat will adopt a new form, and that new form will already give you enough information of who is doing the action. So you won't even need to say I or you or he or she or it. As a matter of fact, we generally don't in Spanish. And these are the kind of things that at the beginning might present themselves as a bit challenging for these people. But that, in my opinion, has a lot to do with how the language is being taught. Because generally, like I said, like for native speakers, this is, intuitive. So they just assume that your brain works the same way. But if you've been drinking water out of a glass your whole life, and all of a sudden I give you a bottle, you're probably going to stick it up your eardrum. No, you're not going to know what to do with it, right? So I think that's what makes it the most interesting, especially for native English speakers, that it will like teach you a whole new aspect or side of things, which in the beginning might seem a bit challenging, but with enough practice and the right approach, it will become second nature, and you're gonna understand your own language and how you communicate so much better. Just broadens, it expands your mind, I would say.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that changing of the word eat example, because that's exactly what I always say, and it's exactly what I find is this is when people give up. 95% of Spanish learners never actually get past that initial phase because they see the way this word changes and they're like, what is this? This is too hard. So the goal is to make that easy.
You like stats. You have so many stats in your head.
Well, 63.5% of stats are made up on the spot. So that actually ties in perfectly to the next question is why don't all native speakers make good Spanish teachers?
The question, why don't all native speakers make good Spanish teachers?
I think the majority of Spanish teachers are just native speakers that know English, and that's it.
Modify the question.
Say again?
May I modify the question?
Of course.
I would say, why do most native speakers don't make good teachers?
Yeah, even better, yeah.
Because they just fail at putting themselves in your shoes, like they have no idea what kind of struggles you're facing. As I said, they like try to teach you from their own perspective, which is also just as biased as yours is. So they fail to understand why you continuously mix up verb changes, conjugations, name them what you will,
Yeah.
or why you keep on saying mucho when it's mucha, because they don't. Most times they don't understand why they do it. They just
Yeah.
know it sounds right. Like if I asked you, why would you say I wrote that letter instead of I righted that letter? You don't know. You just know that wrote sounds better, right?
Mm.
But, I mean, there is a certain logic behind it. Maybe not so much in English, which is quite random.
Mm.
But in order to make a good teacher, I think you need to have been in the shoes of the student before. Ideally, in that very language they're learning. As a matter of fact, I don't think we mentioned this, but like, even though my mother tongue is Spanish, the main languages I teach are German and Dutch.
Yeah.
And people keep on choosing me over native tutors for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was the same for you, wasn't it? Like, you're South African, so I.
Well, yeah, and I spoke about this at the beginning. So when I was wanting to improve my German, I was looking for not a German speaker. I was looking for someone who speaks Dutch and Afrikaans, which I speak Afrikaans, not Dutch, but they're similar. So I thought if this person speaks English and Afrikaans and Dutch and German, they will be able to explain some concepts to me through the other languages we both speak that can't really be understood through English. And so that's what I was speaking about, zooming out. As you learn more languages, you actually zoom out and you look at language as a whole and you see patterns between five different languages, which are not in that sixth language, like Polish for you. That pattern won't be there. And so it starts to give you this bird's eye view, which becomes really useful in putting someone in your shoes. And so if I was to learn Spanish from a native speaker, if they don't speak five or more languages, I would never consider them. Unless I think in terms of the layers method, if you like really understand and you've been trained like how the layers method builds on top of each other, one by one step, one by one layer, so that you can sort of see it through the English speaker's eyes. So that's how I see it.
Yeah.
So you've learned 9 languages. I was wondering what lessons from all those languages would you be able to bring to the students at the layers method?
Okay, let me think of one that applies to all languages, because there are things that apply to different language families. Oh, I know that you need to enjoy the process. Like if you don't enjoy studying this stuff and repeating it and using it in real life, and creating I tend to call it your crew, right? This is a big ship that will take you from one port to another. Yeah, you could try to man the whole ship just by yourself, but it will be a lot easier if you got other people on board with you, supporting you. And with language learning, this is not a wanna have. This is a must have. Like, you need to practice the language with real people in real life. And you need to enjoy making mistakes in front of them, so that next time you get the chance to repeat the same thing that you said wrong the first time, you can do it better.
Yeah.
So it's about enjoying this dynamic of learning and making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. If you don't get yourself to a point where you have fun doing this, then you're for sure not going to succeed.
Yeah.
And if you do, you will. Like, no matter how good or bad you are naturally at languages, eventually you will succeed, whether it takes you 2 months or
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, because you'll keep doing it. Yeah. So what's one mistake that Spanish learners make?
One mistake is, I would say it's forgetting that eventually you will need to stop thinking in English and translating to Spanish, which it's useful at the beginning, because when you know little or no Spanish, it's very hard to think in Spanish, obviously. But with enough exposure, repetition, and context, eventually you need to be able to switch to the new language. So that, I don't know, when I say Rob right now, I'm actually struggling to speak in English because my brain originally associated you with German. But ideally, the context itself should just trigger this switch inside your mind. So eventually you need to get to a point where you either become, I don't know, say Robert, who speaks in English with a weird South African accent, or Roberto. And when you're Roberto, then everything happens in Spanish. And you don't come from Cape Town anymore. Where do you come from in Spanish?
Ciudad del Cabo.
There you go.
Yeah.
You see, like your whole world turns, and this is not an iPhone anymore. This is an iPhone. You
Yeah,
know?
Wi-Fi is the famous one instead of
Exactly.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's fine. And for those who don't know, Ciudad del Cabo means city of the Cape, Cape Town. So it's a different way of thinking of the place name, which
Yeah.
is it's true.
When I speak in Spanish, I'm Francisco de Buenos Aires, right? That's like my natural Argentinian Spanish accent. When I teach, I'm Francisco de Buenos Aires,
Big
which is a
difference.
neutral accent.
Yeah.
When I speak in French, I'm Francisco de Buenos Aires. When I speak in Italian, Francisco di Buenos Aires. You need to adapt everything. You know, you need to like embrace the role and become.
Actually, this will be fun. This is like off script, but I'd love to hear you speak, let's say some of those eight languages. You know, as I bragged about earlier with the accent. I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot and what you would say. Maybe just
Yeah,
say, I am, like you said, this is who I am. This is,
second nature. But do you want me to do it now or later?
um, maybe at the end.
Okay.
Think about what you might say, but I loved listening to you speak, your seven or eight languages when I first discovered you on that video. Um, okay, what would you say to someone who feels bad at learning languages?
Um, don't know if I said this before, or maybe I did with other words, but you should only compete against yourself. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
always
yeah.
going to be someone who can do it better than you can,
Always. Yeah.
and it's all about getting better in a time span. I'm sorry about the cat. She calls the shots here, as you can tell. It's all about getting better. It's not about not making mistakes, because we all make mistakes. I still make mistakes in German after 12 or 14 years of speaking it. I make mistakes in English, but the important thing is to not make the same mistakes every time.
Yes.
If you make a mistake once, it's fine.
Yeah.
If you make it again, then that's the point at which you should go, okay, you know what? I need a new strategy to stop making this mistake.
And
The
you
third
have
time,
those strategies.
yeah, of course.
Because
Like,
it's something I've seen a lot actually is someone making the same mistake over and over. So I know you've got, so many years more than me of teaching experience. So pulling out those
yeah,
strategies to help would be a huge asset.
yeah, there are different techniques and methods that will help depending on the person, but it's all
Mm,
about trying them out and internalizing the ones that seem to work best for you.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I don't want to get too much into detail into this, but maybe,
No.
I mean, for sure, we will use them during the course.
Well, yeah, if you have one example of a strategy, what's one example of a strategy when someone's making the same mistake and they just aren't
Okay,
correcting it?
I'll give you one. There is a word that is very relevant to me because I just wrote a book in Polish which has a very satirical, ironic tone to it. And the word is oppressed. And in Polish, it's rzemięciciel. Yeah, don't even try to pronounce it. And I just kept on forgetting this word, which was strategic because, I constantly made jokes about how Polish learners are a victim of the system, right?
Okay.
Hang on. I think you froze for a second. That's the cat's fault. I apologize. I want to put my keyboard away before it happens again.
Sure.
Go away.
Yeah, she's had a good stroke.
Yeah, so the first time I learned this word, I was like, I'm for sure gonna remember this. But then when
Yeah.
I needed it, I was like, just remember it started with a Z, but then what came after that? So I didn't remember. I had to check my notes. Okay, rzemięciciel, I got it. Then the next time I tried to use it, I forgot it again. I was like, damn it, I remember it started with a Z, but ended with an L, but how can I remember it? So the third time, I was like, okay, I'm never gonna let this happen again. Because as I said, it's not about not making mistakes. It's about making new mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, in a constant loop. So I had a good look at the word and try to come up with a strategy that would allow me to find this word in my brain, even if it took me 5 seconds the next time I needed it without using the dictionary, which was chunking it, splitting it into smaller bits that I could remember. So it's like ziemia, which is earth. So I thought, I imagined someone laying down on the ground, like complete victim of the world. Miao sounds a bit like Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. So I imagined a Vietnamese person laying down on the ground.
Okay.
And it sounds a lot like buddy, yeah, in Polish. It's a different word. So I created a little story connecting these three concepts.
Yeah.
The following time, the fourth time I needed this word, I was like, yeah, give me a second. And I like reconstructed this little story, found the word, and from that point on, the time it took me to reconstruct this word until I found it just reduced itself with every repetition.
Awesome. Awesome story. I love that. That's a great strategy. Okay. Do you have a hardest language out of the 9 that you've learned, just out of interest?
What do you think?
Polish.
Obviously Polish, yeah. For
Um,
sure.
one.
Spanish, trust me, guys, Spanish is a walk in the park. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's simple, but I actually say that Spanish is really hard. And sometimes people argue with me and say, no, the French is harder or German's harder. But, oh, hang on, I just lost a light. Give me one sec. I think
You can
my
blame
cat
it on your cat.
could be, yeah. There we go.
I would not agree with you. I would say Spanish is fairly easy. There are some things that might come across as a bit challenging in the beginning, but with the right approach and enough practice, it's very, very achievable for sure.
Well, the reason I say Spanish is hard relatively for English speakers, of course, there's the idea of conjugation. We spoke about changing, but also Spanish has more past tenses and than French, for example. It's like there's just more options to learn. So there'll be like 2 or 3 words as possibilities when someone's speaking to you to understand,
Hmm.
whereas French would have less options. Yeah, even in German, like past tense, there's just less past tenses. And so when you're trying to say something or when someone's saying something to you, there's the amount of options are more limited in those languages, and Spanish has more. And for me, that's why it's so much more important in Spanish to just reduce how much you learn in the beginning, cut it down as much as possible, and not have like most Spanish courses do. They just teach you all of the options all at once, right at the beginning. And people are like, I had a phone call with the customer a couple of days ago, and he was trying to show his Spanish, and he was saying, instead of like instead of I speak, he said in Spanish, they spoke, which is a massive, massive difference, and it makes no sense. And I said to him, that word, hablaron, they spoke, you shouldn't even know that word. It shouldn't even be floating around in your brain as one of the options as you're about to pick the word. Because if you reduce all those options in your mind, then you're not going to make as many mistakes. You should be learning that way later. So that's my
I
take
would
on
have
it.
said the same, that it is true that there are more tenses in Spanish, for instance, and that's exactly the reason why it's so important to learn it progressively
Yeah,
in layers. Yeah.
yeah,
So first you need to start with a very basic stuff, which probably is going to be just talking about yourself and the person in front of you.
yeah,
I want you to focus on that. And once you get a grip of that and you already associate a certain ending of the verb with, that describing what that person is doing,
yeah,
and another ending describing what you are doing, so that it becomes intuitive, then you're ready to start tackling other
yeah,
people that you want to talk about, let alone other tenses.
yeah,
The problem
exactly.
is that
Yeah,
most people try to do everything at once. So
yeah,
if in lesson one you're like, "Hola, me llamo Francisco," and how do you say, "I don't agree that the Industrial Revolution should have taken place in Europe before"? I want to be like, dude, like, what are you
yeah.
talking about?
I'm not telling you how to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, forget about that. Ask me again in 6 months, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you have a funny story from teaching language and learning language, or just
Uh,
cross-cultural experiences?
yeah, I do. I have a few. Um, I guess a funny one happened recently when I went to Poland for the first time. And, in other languages, there are subtleties or nuances that might be completely irrelevant for you. Like, for
Yeah.
example, um, in Polish, they have this difference between sh and sh, which sound exactly the
What?
same. Or ch and ch.
Those are
But
two different sounds, you're telling me.
yeah, they're two different sounds. Yeah, you better believe it. I think by now I sort of manage my pronunciation of them a little bit better. But
Wow, wow.
a funny one is that I wanted to tell someone that their house smelled like pee. Probably a bad idea from the beginning, but
Someone you just met, I guess. Hi, your house
yeah,
smells like pee.
my partner's uncle, as a matter of fact, who's a former policeman. So yeah, very bad idea. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyways, I said like, yeah, it smells a bit like pee, and he's like peas. I'm like, what do you mean, like peas? Yeah. I mean, the whole sequence is funnier in Polish, obviously, but the point is that, I mean, in Spanish and English, thank God, you would
Yeah.
never say, oh, it smells like peas or like poos, right? It smells like pee or poo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you don't have the skill to count the amount of people who have, done their business there, right?
Yeah.
But in Polish, yeah, it smells like peas. And, these are the little differences which, might be a bit annoying to make the mistake the first time,
Yeah.
cause a lot of trouble, which I'm not going to go into, but it was a very awkward situation when I said that.
So you wanted
But
to say it smelled like peas, like the vegetable, or
no, no,
like
no,
like
like
urine?
piss, like
Yeah.
piss bits in public, in plural.
But you
Yeah.
ended up saying like the vegetable.
No, no, no.
Or
The confusion is like too hard to explain for an
oh, I
earthly.
see. So you can't even like relate. You're just giving me something in English that sounds similar to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Just sounds like something else. Yeah.
the first example that came to mind. But yeah, these things happen all the time, and they happen to me, so they will for sure happen to you. Oh yeah, I got a better one, the
Yeah.
more simple one in Spanish. But I have one that
That's true.
suits the occasion a bit better.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if anyone on the other side has already learned some vocabulary in Spanish, but there's a very important word for people who eat meat that is pollo, right? And there is a very important word for other people, which is polla.
Yeah.
It means
This is
penis,
this is a
basically.
good one.
Polla means penis, yeah?
Or like,
Dick.
isn't it more like dick? It's like saying dick. Yeah.
Yeah, like saying dick. Yeah, it's a bit vulgar. Anyways, I know a lady who once went into like a butcher store, and she wanted to ask for a very big chicken because she wanted to cook some food for some guests she would have over, and she felt very confident about her Spanish. Walked in and said like, "Necesito una polla así de-" Yeah, I don't think I need to translate that, but yeah, it's hilarious. The funny thing is that she never made that mistake again.
Did she tell you the story?
She told me the story, yeah, like that was the way she learned how to say chicken properly in
Instead
Spanish.
of instead of something else. That's
Yeah,
brilliant,
yeah,
man.
these things just happen,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's the best shot you have at getting better at something. You can't get better if you don't make mistakes. So please don't be
Yeah,
afraid.
and laugh at yourself in that situation. Laugh at yourself, share the story, tell everyone, and don't be embarrassed about it. Don't be scared that that might happen. It's going to happen, but it's a funny thing. No one will be offended by someone who's actually putting in the effort to learn your language. They'll be only, I guess, humid, and they'll also be they'll respect you more. The fact that you actually, because they know they're scared themselves to try and speak another language. They know
Yeah,
what you're doing is hard.
yeah.
Okay, one thing that the students at the layers method can expect from Francisco.
Yeah, maybe some other funny stories. Yes, a lot of energy because I freaking love this, Like I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this, to be honest. Um, Loads of emotions for sure, because as I said, like the only thing that I'm gonna ensure is that you make new mistakes.
Yeah,
If you make new mistakes, it's all good. But if you keep on making the same mistake every time, I want to be like, we need to work on this, or else we're not
yeah,
going to get anywhere.
yeah,
Like, we're building a structure, and if the lowest layers, the foundations of
yeah.
our structure are not stable enough, then whatever we put on top of it is going to be very unstable.
Sure.
Um,
Which actually brings me to the point because people often ask me, "Hey, I'm on layer 7. Should I? I feel like maybe going back to layer 1. Should I, or is that a waste?" And I always say, like, as much as you can, go back to layer 1 and start again. Start again. The way that it's designed is that I'll I'll be bringing in more concepts on top of that foundation on each layer, and that means that if your foundation, if you get the chance to reinforce that foundation, always do it. Don't be bored by that. Know that it's a good use of time, the best use of time. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I'm for sure gonna not demand, but get the most out of each person, because we've all got different skills and virtues and flaws. But for me, after so many years, it's very easy to know how much a person can learn within a time span. So I want to ensure that you do get the most out of
Yeah, with
your potential.
all your tricks as well that you've gathered over the years to help.
Yeah.
Okay, so just one message to the community at Layers Method.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Try to enjoy doing this, because you're not going to regret it. Like, it's a very favorable investment result ratio.
Yeah,
Like, what you're doing now is really very little compared to how much, let's say, profit or benefit you can reap out of this.
yeah, yeah. So, are you okay to show off a couple of your language skills, like maybe just introducing yourself in some of the
Sure.
languages you know?
This is what people want to see, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want to see it. I love it.
Okay. I guess it makes sense to start with Spanish, right? My mother tongue. Cuando estoy en Argentina normalmente hablo así con mis amigos, porque en Argentina tenemos un acento un poco más italiano, pero cuando doy clases intento tener un acento un poquito más neutral, con las S más marcadas y otras conjugaciones, otros... Bueno, ahora estoy hablando más como español de España, ¿no? Es un poco la
So,
inercia.
okay, so I need to stop you there because for those who don't understand, like this is not how Francisco would be talking in a class. Like this is he started off speaking with his native Argentinian accent, and then he switched into a Spain accent, which is very different, and it's again sounds like a native Spanish speaker. So I mean, maybe maybe what you could do, because most of these people in the Les method are actually in the States, is
Yeah,
a little bit of the Mexican accent, which in my opinion is a very nice accent to be able to hear clearly what somebody's saying.
yeah, it's actually easier for me to do in South America we call it neutral Latin accent, but
Yeah,
it's just Mexican.
it's Mexican, which is a great accent. I've had great conversations with Mexicans where I was like, wow, I could really understand every single word as a beginner when I was starting out.
Yeah,
So
it's fairly neutral, so the name does justice to it. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'm used to working like that and to hearing it a lot, because, as I said, in Argentina, we grew up watching cartoons and stuff like that in the 90s, and all the dubbed movies were dubbed not in Argentinian Spanish, but in Mexican Spanish.
ah,
That's like, I don't know, sort of intuitive for us.
yeah.
Vocabulary, the pronunciation, all of it. Yeah. I mean, do you want to do the other languages,
I
or?
would love that. Yeah. I don't know if I should call them out and then I can't even remember which ones you
Yeah,
speak this to
maybe I
me.
can start speaking the languages and you can tell the audience what language that was.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Die nächste Sprache, die ich gelernt habe, war Deutsch. Die habe ich angefangen, als ich 18 Jahre alt war. Und ja, meine Oma sprach Deutsch und auch meine Ex-Freundin. Und dadurch habe ich natürlich so schnell Deutsch gelernt.
Yeah, so that was the reason I'm smiling is that German like sounded to me like a native German speaker, and it's just so odd to hear someone switch from, Spain Spanish accent to native German speaker accent. I love it. It's beautiful.
De volgende taal die ik super leuk vind, omdat ik ja, gewoon iedere dag in deze taal spreek, is Nederlands. Nou, jij spreekt ook Afrikaans, dus ik denk dat jij beseft, geen idee, 70% van wat ik zeg.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I actually worked with quite a few Dutch people the last few years in my corporate job, and this is exactly how they sound. Like this is how they sound when they speak Dutch. So again,
You need to be overly optimistic to speak Dutch, otherwise it doesn't cut it.
yeah, it's such a weird accent, eh?
Yeah. Alors, je tiens plus français parce que j'ai un passeport français. Du coup, je me suis dit qu'il fallait avoir un peu de connaissance de la langue si tu vas avoir un document qui dit que tu es français. Je le parle pas trop souvent parce que ici en Espagne, il n'y a pas beaucoup de français.
So he was saying that he's got a French passport. I didn't know you have a French passport. That's pretty handy, huh?
Yeah.
Always good to have an extra passport in your back
I live
pocket.
in Europe. With my Argentinian passport, it wouldn't be that easy.
Yeah, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And the accent again, for me, I go to France quite often, go surfing there, and this is how it sounds. Like this is how the French sound.
Nemmeno io direi che l'italiano, secondo me, è la lingua più naturale per me, perché in Argentina parliamo un po' con l'accento, cioè parliamo spagnolo, ma con un accento piuttosto italiano, e un sacco di parole italiane anche, tipo birra, gamba, eccetera, eccetera. Forse per quello che da quando sono venuto in Europa quasi tutti i miei amici nella mia circondanza sono stati degli italiani.
Awesome. So this is my personal, the language that sounds the best to me is Italian. Um, and I think what you were saying were so my Italian's weak, but you were saying how Argentina and Italy are very related, and the accent of Argentina is somewhat taken from the Italian. Whenever I meet someone from Argentina, they often tell me that they speak Italian or their grandmother's Italian or something like that. So there's a big connection there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most natural for me because, an Argentinian basically is an Italian who speaks Spanish.
Right.
Okay, what's next? Okay, this is one of the newest acquisitions because for some reason I only started learning it quite late.
Yeah.
And it's a variety from South America as well. It sounds very different to the European version of it. Então, eu sou Francisco, agora estou morando aqui em Barcelona, mas na verdade eu sou argentino da Buenos Aires e nada, aqui com a minha namorada que é polonesa, em casa falamos inglês, pero keep on saying pero, you see, like I haven't spoken much Portuguese lately.
That's like the Italian pero.
No, well, it's somewhere between.
Spanish, sort of Spain Spanish.
Flipping into Spanish, because they're so similar, Portuguese and Spanish, but yeah, it's not pero. Pero, because you guys know it means but. In Portuguese, they don't use pero, they use mais, which is also a word we have in Spanish, mas.
It's like French, yeah?
Yeah, like me in French or ma in Italian, but it's a bit more of higher register. You would use it if you're, writing a poem or something like that, but it means but. Yeah, so that's Portuguese, obviously.
Okay, what are we missing? You said you don't want to do Swedish because you've kind of lost that a little bit, right?
No, I could give you my introduction, which should be ingrained because I repeated it so many times. Which, if I remember correctly, was Hej, jag heter Francisco. Jag bor i Barcelona. Men jag kommer från Argentina. Very weird, odd melody, right?
Yeah, it's odd melody. It's odd melody. I hear it a lot in Mallorca. There's a lot of Swedes that kind of take over here and buy up property. So I've gotten used to that melody of like, what's interesting with that language is they have like two accents on the same word.
Yeah.
Which is weird. You never really hear that in other languages.
It sounds like they're jumping from one hill to the next when they talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Robert, my name would be like Robert. Like both syllables have a big emphasis, not just picking one syllable like in every other languages. Yeah. Every other language. So
I never got the grip of that because I failed to do what I was preaching about before, which is practicing enough. Like I did join a choir when I was living in London just to practice Swedish, but yeah, I didn't develop any like longer lasting friendships out of that. And
are we missing apart from Polish? Are we missing anything else?
Yeah. I can try to do Polish. My partner just arrived, and our dog wears a diaper. Yeah.
I see your dog.
I feel very self-aware right now because she's, the ultimate boss here. She always hears stuff that other people won't. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Because so just for context, your girlfriend's Polish, right? So she's going to be judging you right now.
Gdzie byłaś? W sklepie. Co tam kupiłaś?
U lekarza.
O, i wszystko w porządku?
Wszystko okej, dziękuję.
Okej, cieszę się. Tak, ona była u lekarza, bo jest trochę przeziębiona. I know they don't understand, but
I have no idea.
Anyways, yeah, that's Polish.
Awesome. So did we cover all of them? I feel like.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we did English. Did we do English?
With the most, like, we were speaking English the whole time, weren't we?
Oh, yeah. Spanish, Italian. Let's do the Romance languages. Portuguese, French. That's 5. German, Dutch, Polish, Swedish. Oh my word, that's 9 languages. That's ridiculous.
Well, there's a 10th one, Catalan, which
Oh,
people
you live in that area?
yeah, but I never actively worked on it.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that is that, since my brain is so used to like analyzing and picking up on patterns,
Yeah.
like I can for sure write and read and listen in Catalan,
Sure.
but I can't speak.
You can't?
Like,
Okay.
no. Whenever I try to speak, like I do it very slowly and, mix things up because it's like somewhere between Spanish, Italian, French, and Portuguese.
Yeah.
So like, it's very easy to slip into one of the other ones.
Yeah.
Why? Because I haven't done the spaced repetition work of like actually, training my brain and my mouth, my software, and my hardware.
Yeah.
To work in that language.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, man. Okay. We spent a lot of time, so I really appreciate that, and really excited to have you coming on board and joining us at the Layers Method. So I think it's going to make such a huge impact. In my opinion, the best polyglots I know, or because for those who don't know, I've watched these polyglots on YouTube, these famous guys, and I don't think they have the skill that Francisco has. I think that some of their methods take a bit long, and I think their actual accents are nowhere near as good as Francisco. So for me, my favorite polyglot in the world, and I'm really honored to have you with us.